Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey everybody, I am so delighted to introduce today's guest, Grant Tate. Grant is a servant leader, transformational coach, and business consultant who helps people learn how to thrive in our chaotic world. He challenges leaders and emerging professionals to answer the questions, who am I? What am I called to do now? Who am I going to work with to get it done? A highly sought after as a coach, Grant uses his writing and his role as CEO of Bridge Business Transformations as vehicles to develop strong relationships with clients and friends. And might I also say, he is the author of the book, Hand on the Shoulder, Finding Freedom in the Confluence of Love and Career, which I have in my hands right as we are speaking. So please join me in welcoming Grant Tate. Welcome, Grant.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
I am so happy to have you here on Work from the Inside Out and welcome you from your home office in Charlottesville, Virginia. So as you know, on Work from the Inside Out, we love to begin at the beginning. Tell us a little bit about your formative years and where this journey began for you and how that may or may not have informed where you are today.
Well, I'm a small town kid, grew up in a small town just 30 miles from where I'm sitting right now called Orange, just like the fruit. Middle class family. My dad worked at a silk mill, a textile mill, and he was a first line supervisor there. And I think one of the things that led to where I am now, he came home with lots of stories, mostly about people, how people he worked with, people who were struggling, people that he helped with their work or whatever was going on. And I was just fascinated by that. He gave me some career advice. First was never to go into textiles because he thought it was too difficult.
Really?
And that difficulty was evident because he was working 12 hours a day, 6 days a week when I was a little kid.
Wow.
Which meant that he only had one day at home and came home quite late. He left at 6 in the morning and he got off work at 6 at night. And which meant also very small lunch.
Wow.
And he had some of his stories were how difficult the management was of the silk mill. That's another story.
Yeah. But
it had a big impact on me as I was growing up and thinking about what sort of career I wanted. But one of the things that I think affected my life is a little different from that was I started school earlier than most kids in age because my parents put me in school in spite of the fact that my age was a little off the beat of how people typically start.
Yeah.
And I graduated high school age 16.
Okay.
Which meant I was the little kid in the classroom.
Oh.
And I was not going to make it by strength on the playground.
Aha.
And I believe and I quickly figured out that survival meant I had to use my brain, not my brawn.
Wow.
And I think sort of developing strategies and developing techniques for getting along and working with people and resolving conflicts through good talk and clever thinking was a way to get along.
So you figured that out pretty young?
Pretty young, yes. And I did have a friend who was a kind of the tough guy on the street, I guess. Not actually on the street, but he saw one time that I was having some trouble. So he met me at recess time at school, and we'd go down to the jumping pit, which was filled with sawdust. And he
Huh.
taught me a few jiu-jitsu tricks, which served me great later when I was in the Army.
Wow.
But at
Huh.
age 15, I went to work in a furniture store. It was
Hmm.
summer, needed
Mm.
a summer job. So I went down to the furniture store and asked for a job, and they hired me.
Hmm.
And the fellow that owned the store, with an unlikely name of Gorey, Goree, Wall,
Huh.
Waugh, was the store owner.
Uh-huh.
And there were four of us actively working there, and we did everything.
Mm.
But in the first week, I learned the routine that every morning we had to sweep the store. Now, this store was huge by my standards, three huge rooms of
Mm.
furniture displays, and we had to, by hand, sweep up the place. And on the fourth day, he said to me, Grant, you're the worst sweeper I've ever seen.
It's funny the
Okay.
things that stick with you, right?
Yeah. Quick evaluation, right? I mean,
Yeah.
feedback immediately, right?
Wow.
Then he said, how would you like to be the bookkeeper? And of course, I had no idea what a bookkeeper did. So
Right.
I said, sure, I'll try it. And just at that early age, he put me up on a desk, and I had to fill in the lines on the bookkeeping materials. It wasn't computerized in those days, but
No. Huh?
but I became the bookkeeper, and he helped me along the way. His desk was right next to mine, and he would coach me along the way. And the other thing, we were sitting up on a mezzanine overlooking the store.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And when somebody would come in the front door, we could see them.
Mm-hmm.
And he would say to me, Grant, who is that? And I would think and say, oh, I think that's Mrs. Smith. I said, yes, that's Mrs. Smith. When was she in the store last? And I would think, oh, well, been 2 weeks, I think. Okay. Do you remember what she bought? If she bought anything? I think she bought a chair. And then he would walk me through that routine and then ask me to go down and greet Mrs. Smith.
Huh.
And then I would be prepared with my story as Mrs. Smith, how's the chair going?
So this was all
But
in a summer job, or did you end up continuing this
I
job through
worked
the
at
school
that
year?
store all the way through college on
Oh,
weekends.
wow. Okay.
And but there are a couple of lessons in what I've just said about him. Number
Yeah.
one is he figured out that my talents were elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
He was playing to my strengths. My strengths were not sweeping.
Yeah.
I was a little brainy. Okay, so he figured I could do bookkeeping, and he quickly assigned me to something that he thought I could do well. So go to your strengths.
That's amazing.
The other thing about who's Mrs. Smith was this store is all about the customers.
Yeah.
Knowing and understanding the customers in a small town is what it's all about.
Sure.
And that lesson has stuck with me forever through my life, is that developing good relationships is really, really key.
Mm-hmm.
And they also, he was the counselor for many, many people.
Hmm.
We had a clientele in a small town in Virginia, mixed clientele of many white people, many African American people.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the people that came into the store could not afford to buy a stove, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever it was, $150 or something. And he would sell them the stove and say, just bring me $2 a week. And he would give them credit for buying whatever they needed, and they would come in every week and pay their $2.
Hmm.
And as a bookkeeper, I learned that the compliance to that was almost 100%. Seldom would anybody not pay their bill.
Hmm.
The other thing was that I thought early on, well, he must be marking up the prices so he can get they won't have to charge interest, but he wasn't. His prices were competitive, and
Hmm.
he was just out to do good for people.
Hmm.
And then the other part of that work, of course, was I got to deal with people from many races and many levels of society. Mrs. Smith may have been one of the rich people in town who came in buy an expensive chair, but others came for their basic needs.
Yeah.
And then
and you're mentioning people's ability to pay, and you're mentioning people of different races and things like that. This was back at a time in a small town in Virginia when, people were even more segregated than they are today. Would you say that's true?
Totally segregated.
Yeah.
And, at the societal level, I guess I would say, there were, if you take a water fountain in town, there'd be a water fountain for African American Black people, and there would be a water fountain for white people.
Yeah.
If the movie theater in town had a place for white people to sit and a place for Black people to sit. Two schools, of course.
Wow.
But that experience, however, I think gave me some insights that were really important. Haywood Johnson was one of my colleagues in the store. He was the man who knew how to do everything.
Mm.
And Haywood and I were close colleagues, close friends. We delivered furniture together in the truck all over the adjoining counties. So we spent a lot of time together. One day we were spending a day laying a floor. We did linoleum floors.
Oh, you did everything, huh? But no sweeping. No sweeping.
But I was his assistant. He was the expert. I was I was the apprentice.
I see.
So we knew that this was all day. So we'd taken our lunch, but we were in this little back of a country store down in lower end of the county. And at lunchtime, the woman of the house came and said, "Oh, would you like to have lunch?" And we said, "Oh, that would be nice." And so when lunchtime came, she took me into the dining room and she said, "I've fixed a place for Haywood on the porch." The story's in the book, by the way, Hand on the Shoulder. As a 15 or 16-year-old at the time, I was just, what do I say? I don't want to insult these people, but at the same time, I'm caring about my friends. And much to my happiness now and good memories, I said, "Well, Haywood and I eat together, and we'll eat out here."
Yeah.
And one of the consequences of that, in retrospect, I wish I'd had a chance to talk to Haywood and say, "How does that feel?" And those days, you didn't ask those questions.
Right.
But it gave me obviously a view that I remember well as to how that played out just in a little incident like that. And he and I visited. We were delivering furniture, stoves, and other things to people all over the county, and we saw how people were living, and that I think had a big impact on me overall.
Yeah, I can imagine that you had a real front row seat to that. I would imagine that you had many encounters there where people treated you differently than they treated him.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
Yes. And so, it's given me a really personal feel when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion these days. Then, having worked with a lot of people I cared about, and lone people cared about, then equality is something I really care about at a personal level.
So you. Not to jump off of that topic, but I think there's many more lessons learned going forward.
Yeah.
You worked at the store. It sounds like you got tremendous experience on so many levels. I mean, skills and a view of society and so many different experiences, a lot of growing up, it sounds like, too. And you did that while you were in college, and you were an engineering student in college.
I was an engineering student. And the way I tell the story about that graduating high school, I graduated from high school with at least 3 marketable skills. I was a bookkeeper. I knew retail sales. And in school, I'd studied drafting.
Ah, okay.
So I worked my way through college. I had, not a lot of money. And I graduated from college with $100.
What kind of engineering did you study?
I studied electrical engineering at the University of Virginia. It was just 2 miles from
there.
Here. And then went to work for IBM right after college.
Now, what made you decide to study electrical engineering?
I had a high school counselor who looked at my grades and looked at my science and said, "Oh, Grant, you should be an engineer." And my reaction was, "Great, what's that?" But in the books that I retrieved from my mother's house many years later, there were 2 books. One was Your Career in Engineering, and the other one was Your Career in Journalism.
Oh, interesting.
And it was the Lady of the Tiger, right? And so I chose engineering because I thought, I know engineers are needed and I know they get paid well. And it did appeal to my science.
Bookkeeping or accounting was never on the radar, huh?
Never on the radar.
Well, how wonderful that you had that experience at the store to do that work and to be able to say, okay, tried that, eliminated that, right? So
the other thing it did tell me what I didn't want to do, because I could do it, but sitting there and working through the figures all day was not my cup of tea.
Yeah.
I like something more creative.
Yeah. And yet you had this amazing experience in retail, in the furniture industry, which I would imagine was pretty robust in that part of the country. And so going on to IBM, which is back then was, even still now, but back then was a large conglomerate. That must have been quite a switch for you.
Well, working for a big company was a huge switch, but yet I realized that experience in the store had helped me know how to work with people, and I became a first line manager at IBM at age 25. And that soon had 100 people. I was working. I was the manager over 100 people.
Wow.
And one of the reasons I was in that position was that I entered the manufacturing facility at a time when there weren't many engineers directly in engineering in manufacturing. They were in the support functions, but I was actually there testing computers and working with the people who were actually manufacturing the products. And so it was, and it was strange. I still looked like I was 16.
So it was like being back on the playground, right?
Yes, that's
school,
right.
You had to use your charm to get your way through things, right?
So but the experience was really helpful, and of course you have to resolve a lot of problems. And when I had 100 people working for me, some of the people I had 4 managers reporting to me, and all of them had started with the company before I was born.
Oh, that's always an interesting dynamic to have people reporting to you who are older than you, have many more years of experience. That's an interesting dynamic. How did that work out for you?
Well, I think that one of the important elements of that, and I work today with young managers, and one of the most important things I think with working with older people is honor their experience.
Yeah.
Honor their point of view.
Yeah.
Don't think you know everything. Just take advantage of the experience you have around you.
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of teamwork is really important. So that element, I guess you could say respect is the key word here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Don't think yes, you may have all the degrees and all those credentials, but other people have learned different ways and have always things you can learn from.
Mm-hmm. And still, it can be a tricky dynamic, I would imagine.
Absolutely, for sure.
I talk to people often who are, managing people, sometimes even managing people who used to be their superior. Or,
yes.
There's all kinds of dynamics that go on in the way organizations are changing these days. Yes. But it's not unusual to even, for some of my clients who are, more experienced professionals to find themselves interviewing with their prospective, director or, the person who would be managing them. And that person is quite a bit younger than them.
Oh, yes. But, I think one of the questions, if you're that younger manager, is people will think, why you, not me? Why are you the manager, not me? Mm-hmm. And I ask myself that question.
I bet. Yeah.
What is it? What's different about me that I have this job that somebody else doesn't?
Yeah. Well, and sometimes it's sort of like, well, that's just the decision that was made. No one's saying it was the best decision.
That's right.
But it does seem to happen quite a bit. And there's all kinds of reasons for it. Clearly, you're here today. You survived it.
Right. Yes.
and you found your way through it. How long were you with IBM for?
30 years.
Oh, well, that's quite a tenure.
So the book I've described sometimes as a book of disillusionment and transformation.
Ooh. Tell us a little more about that.
Well, the last, you always hear this story, particularly in politics, where you say, I didn't leave the party left me. Uh-huh. Well, that's the way I felt about IBM. When I first joined it, it was, respect for the individual was the number one value. Mm-hmm. And when I became a manager, the person who appointed me said, Grant, we don't fire many people, but if you don't respect your people, then that's the way you get fired. Mm-hmm. So we look for you to help develop your people and to treat them fairly, appropriately, and whatever. Mm-hmm. And they drilled that in.
Yeah.
In the last part of my career, I think they had lost a lot of that. Mm-hmm. And there's some stories in the book about my interaction with the CEO of IBM, Frank Carey at the time, who in those interactions, I realized that respect for the individual was no longer the top value. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You read lots of stories about how in the 80s, IBM lost the market. They went down in stock value and they got into big trouble. Mm-hmm. My view of that is what they really lost was that concern for the people, and they lost the people, not just the market.
Right.
And they recovered, but they are an entirely different kind of company.
Yeah, it's a different company now.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
But the book started with the hand on the shoulder story.
Right.
Is really the story of me being at a meeting in New Mexico, and when the man who was leading the group, the meeting, came in, put his hand on my shoulder and said, your wife needs to talk to you. And it was a story that my father had just died, in fact, here in Charlottesville, on a stress test. at, while they were testing his heart.
Oh, wow.
And so you can say, okay, what was that was a major impact on me.
Sure.
And why is that? Well, people lose parents,
Yeah.
but that happened at a time when I was really vulnerable because I was having trouble with my career path at the company. I was having trouble with my marriage at the time. And all those things sort of converged. That sent me into a turmoil. And the book then has some stories about what happened during that time and what the recovery was like.
So during that time, you had a lot of turmoil. You had a major loss that you weren't expecting. It sounds like clearly at that juncture. And was that the beginning of your departure from IBM at that time, or did you stick around for a while?
It was the beginning of the end.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and I had sort of, from a psychological standpoint, hit the bottom. And there's also a story of me with a psychiatrist in the book. But when I finally departed, I became a teacher at a college for a couple of years, and then from that launched on my own career, and then went to Europe for 5 years.
Oh, so you left IBM. In 30 years, I would imagine it was considered to be a retirement.
That was the early retirement. Yes.
Early retirement.
Right.
And then you were teaching college. What were you teaching?
I was at a small university in Connecticut and teaching engineering.
Ah, okay. Well, I know it sounds obvious, but you never know. I believe you're a man of many talents, so I wouldn't want to presume that. So you were
that was not actually the first time, because also this is in the book. While I was still with IBM, I took a year off and went to the University of New Mexico on the engineering faculty there for a year. And part of my job was to help recruit people from the diverse society in New Mexico to help them to engineering. Native Americans, Hispanic people, African American people, not many of those in New Mexico, but that was what I was trying to do. So that was an excellent experience. Came very close to staying because I had an opportunity to be on the faculty and also to join one of my colleagues in a consulting firm. But my wife at the time would not have any of it, insisted on going back to Connecticut. And I had to decide whether I stay and become a single person at that time, or whether I join her and go back to Connecticut. And I chose the latter.
I see. So you had a little bit of an ultimatum going on there.
That's right. But then going back to Connecticut, I taught at Pace University in New York as an adjunct for several times, for several years. And then after our breakup, I then had a second marriage. It was a disaster. And then coming out of that, I went to Europe for 5 years searching for myself.
So you left IBM. You were teaching. You had a second marriage it sounds like in Connecticut.
Right, in Connecticut.
And then you said, okay, time to do a little soul searching.
Soul searching, right.
Yeah. And you said, might as well do that in Europe.
Exactly right. Well, had along with two other people, I had started this company.
Oh, okay.
And this is back in the early 90s, the forerunner of this company.
Okay.
And my friend, who was one of my colleagues at IBM, Bill Whammer, had worked in Europe, and he got an offer while we were working together to go back to Europe and lead a company in Paris. And I said, well, Bill, you have to take it. You love Paris, you love Brussels, and Europe was a great experience. So he went. But then about 3 months later, the phone rang one day on my desk, and Bill said, help.
Uh-huh.
And said, what do you need? He said, how would you like to come over for 6 months? And I was in transition and said, when do you need me? And he said, how about Monday?
You said, let me check the flights.
And it was the following Monday, I had a week. So I actually packed up and flew to Paris.
Wow.
And then worked in Paris for a year together with Bill, and then followed a project to the Netherlands. Another project at the time.
With him?
No, this was independent. We had wrapped up that job in Paris. The 6 months became a year, so I was still working there in Paris for a year. And then got to the Netherlands and was working on projects and said, this is pretty good.
Yeah.
I think I'll stay. But unfortunately, you need a work permit. I'm going to get a work permit.
Yeah.
And I had gotten to know the woman who is now my wife.
Mm-hmm.
And she went into the library and came back with 2 documents that were provisions in the tax treaty between Netherlands and the United States that we could start a company and I could hire myself. So we did all the paperwork and everything, and one day went down to immigration. I'll never forget this guy. He's way up towering over me. And
a lot of them are in the Netherlands.
Right.
Talk about still being that small guy, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So he says, well, Mr. Tate, your visa's running out in 60 days. What are you going to do? And I said, easy, sir. I'm starting a company and I'm hiring myself. And he laughed in my face. And then she put these 2 documents on the desk, shifted into Dutch language, and we started a company.
Wow. So I'm curious, the work that you were doing in Paris and then independently in the Netherlands, was that all engineering work, or were there other things? Because clearly what you're doing today is distinctly different. So I'm curious how that all, I know it sounds like throughout everything you've done, you have brought, a lot of interpersonal skills to the work that you've done, and that has clearly been a strength. But you definitely have made a shift over time. So I'm curious, how that has played out.
Well, yeah. And so one of the last jobs I had at IBM was running an engineering education department that was training engineers, scientists, and programmers. And that under my wing was a distance education operation. We were doing video primarily as a means of getting courses out to people, plants and labs around the country. And Bill Weimer was one of the people that was doing that same thing, but he was in a different location. And the unit he was heading in Paris was that kind of organization called Europace that was serving 15 countries in Europe. So I had the technology and the knowledge about how do you organize and run courses and distance education. And we were at the leading edge at the time. When I went to Europe, we were trying to develop and market those kinds of courses. And that was quite interesting. Then when we started the company, and what the company did was research in distance education and educational technology.
Okay. I see. And that was the company that you and Bill it sounded like someone else started in the States, but then Bill left to go work for another company in Europe. Is that right?
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
Right.
So it was quite a good experience, and we did a lot of work for the European Commission. And our capture rate for bids was something like 50%. So people loved to work with us.
That's great.
And that was partly because we were among the very few that knew that technology at the time.
Wow. And did this work require you to speak other languages, or were people doing most of this in English?
It was all English.
Mm-hmm.
My wife obviously spoke Dutch, so when
Right.
we had legal things or things that have required Dutch language, but the language of the European Commission was primarily English
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes French, but all the documents were in English.
I see.
Yeah,
So once you, let's say, hung up your shingle in the Netherlands, you were good to go. You didn't have to like come back to the States and do a
right.
dance so that you could go back, right? I mean, I know
Not at
people
all.
who've done that where
Right.
they have to
Every
sort of
every
dip
6
it,
months or 3 months, you have to
right?
check back in.
Yeah,
Right.
you got to dip
So
a toe and then go back, or
mm,
yeah.
the only time I had to go back was 5 years later when I said it's time to go home.
Ah, okay. And that was just based on just needing to be closer to,
My family was still in the United States,
yeah,
and
yeah.
it was also from the standpoint of technology and what was going on here. I thought it was important to
Okay.
come back, and so came here and then restarted the company. But I decided coming here that it was time for me to return to what I saw as my core skills, which was basically organization and working with individuals to create change in organizations.
Hmm.
Most of my IBM career was around that.
Mm-hmm.
I had 15 different management or leadership jobs, but I
Aha.
only replaced two people. That's what that means is the most 13 of those jobs were either starting a new organization or changing an organization.
Aha. So what you're saying is that of those 15 roles, 2 were to replace other people, but the other 13 were essentially you were those roles were created so that you could be kind of a change agent, it sounds like.
Exactly. Right. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was one experience, and again, this is listed in the book, Hand on the Shoulder,
Yeah.
a turnaround job at a big software lab I was sent to fix.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
And it was the only job I had on contract, actually.
Oh,
I was working as a director of organization for a man that had 30,000 people in his division.
whoa.
And the director of organization focuses on what do we need to change to be able to get the operation to work better.
Mm-hmm.
And, for instance, Grant, we need to take a look at headquarters and see how we can make it work better, that
Mm-hmm.
sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he said to me one day, it's time for you to go back to line management, which means managing a group of people. And I said, I'm ready. And then a week later, he said, I want you to go to Sterling Forest. And Sterling Forest was a big software operation, 900 people, about half of them programmers writing code.
Mm-hmm.
And planning the whole logistics system for IBM internally. And he said to me, go out and spend 30 days and come back and tell me what you want to do.
Wow.
So I went over, did my analysis, talked to every manager in the place, interviewed a bunch of people, looked at all the charts and graphs and data, came back with my charts and said, here's what I found. Here's the program. And he said, how long is it going to take? And I said, 2 years. He said, keep those charts. and those charts are still in my office, my storage room.
I see. I see.
And so 18, there were 900 people in the organization. And 18 months later, we had pared the organization down to 650. The morale indicators were up. The budget was met. We had done some remissioning, and I came back with my charts and said, here's what we've done. Check, 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 check. Here's the data. And he said, well, what do you want to do now? And I said, I want a new job. And so within a week, I was interviewed for a job in one of the international divisions and went on to something else. It started a new other organization
Wow.
and another division, right?
So it sounds like, with minus those the later years, it was quite a journey. All these,
It, it,
I mean, it really was way beyond a career in electrical engineering. I mean, you really, there are people who get doctorates in organizational or industrial psychology and
right.
organizational development and all these things. And it sounds
Yeah.
like your background in engineering was really a slice of what you brought to this work.
Well, of course, the thing we haven't talked about is that IBM sent me to Stanford for the Sloan program, which was not an MBA at the time, it was a certificate program.
Mm-hmm.
But I got a master's in electrical engineering before that.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I went to PACE, got my doctorate. The doctorate is in basically organizational behavior.
Aha. Well, there you go.
Right.
I thought you had your doctorate. I apologize.
Yeah,
I was pretty sure that you did. So I apologize for that.
No.
So would you say, though, it sounds like, though, you were doing a lot of this even besides all of that?
Yeah, well, yes, I was doing organization work before I went to school to get the theory.
Yeah.
So so basically, it was like, oh, that's why I did that.
Mm-hmm. So that's interesting. So when you went to get the doctorate and you had all this, hands-on practical experience, how did you marry your experience and the theory? How did that work for you?
Well, it obviously is when, as an example, the basic theory talks about the integration and how things work together. And one of my coaching clients, who's going to be here tomorrow, is working with a small group, and I've just looked at her organization, and I see all the silos. How do these people integrate their work? So that's one way that it informs your vision.
Yeah.
And all the reading I do still has to do with that. And it obviously informs how you do individual coaching and organization work.
Mm-hmm.
And so I find that when I look at a problem, having had that background, then I know some of the, not just the theory, but the practical problems of how do you make a change. As
we say, been there, done that.
Right. Yes. But you're right about the IBM career, because the way I sometimes say it, I grew up with computers. I was part of the original personal computer team.
Yeah.
And then, when we were starting from scratch, it was some of the stories around that whole experience are quite interesting how we did that.
I can imagine that'd be a whole nother episode, Grant.
That's right. Yeah,
I mean, it's phenomenal. I mean, and so when you look at all the layers, I was going to say twists and turns. There are many of those, but it also feels like there are layers of experiences and how you've built this. There's an organic nature to the way that you have, gone from one thing to the next. It sounds like, unlike some people who prepare a resume and interview for jobs, you really have kind of been on this organic journey, so to speak. It sounds like you have made some very intentional choices along the way, and yet certain things kind of presented themselves and you had to make a choice whether to step into them along the way as well. That there were some elements of serendipity and other elements where it was just a choice whether or not to do something. But you haven't been someone who had to pound the pavement and go out and get a job.
Right.
And I don't say that, it's not a criticism at all.
Right.
It's just it's a very interesting observation that I almost wish more people would think about this, because I think that there's probably a lot of people in, I would say your generation. It's really our generation. I'm in your generation, and who, had I think a different view of what it means to grow a career or to be successful, right?
Yeah. And one of the things I try to work with my clients is, what's your purpose? Who are you, and what are you really pursuing? And thinking back about all the things that I've described is, well, what was I pursuing? Well, one of the big things is just curiosity.
Yes.
How does this work? What's the big challenge here? Oh my gosh, let me just go figure this one out.
Yeah.
And that is that sort of newness of exploring things. And one of the things going back to childhood again, is I've always been interested in people and cultures and other places. And when we go into Estonia to do a workshop, I just want to talk to everybody I can to find out what it's like to live there.
Yeah.
And what are the problems that you have, and how can you address those things? And one of the things I look for today is I like to work with people who have leverage and have that same kind of curiosity. What are I can't change everything, but I can work with people who are.
Right. So that you can lend or leverage your skills and your insights to someone who can then take those and step into them. Right.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about. Definitely. Yeah.
And the other question, of course, is, what is keeping you from doing what you want to do?
That's a big question, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. I talked to a young woman this morning. We do assessments, personal assessments, and all of her scores are just filled. She's filled with capability.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things, she has a Ferrari sitting in the driveway, but can she drive it? and the limitation is that she had some incidents that really affected her self-esteem. And then how do we help her through this period to recover who the real person is?
Right.
And what are we can't do psychiatry.
No.
But we can help provide exercises and feedback and experiences that help her find out, again, what her real capabilities are, and to apply them. And really, she's working in a field that's really important. She's got really important skills, and she just needs to focus and get this done. So that's what we'll focus on in the coming weeks.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think it's, obviously there are things in some people's cases that run really deep, that need therapy or need to be unlocked in that way. And in other cases, in some ways, they're just mindsets or habits that we've developed. And not to oversimplify it, but sometimes, and I know this is true for myself sometimes, we just have to get out of our own way a little bit.
Oh, yes. Right. And one of the things that I talk to people about sometimes is what I call the thinking path model. And Kahneman, of course, said that we have two kind of ways of thinking, fast and slow.
Right.
And the question then is, okay, we know what fast is all about, but what is that slow process? And that slow process has a lot to do with what your assumptions you're bringing to that incident. So if something happens, you have an emotional response, but then how you're what attitude you're bringing, and your assumptions can determine the next output.
Absolutely. And our
And
assumptions sometimes run our behavior, and our assumptions are based on a made up story, right?
you're exactly right. And if you're working with someone and you say, well, so and so is always wrong, well, that person's going to be wrong, whether you
Right.
believe it or not, whether
Right.
whatever it says. So
Right.
they try to control your assumptions and then think things through.
Yeah. So now I know that you've reached a point in your work today where you are really keeping your focus on a few clients at a time, correct?
That's right.
And
Yes,
and yet
exactly.
I know that you still have a desire to help and reach people in certain ways. So what is a good way for people to be able to learn from what you have to offer? And yet I know that it's not like you're saying, come everybody, be my client. Not to say that you're not open to that,
Right.
but it's, I know that you are keeping things somewhat contained, and yet there are things you offer that people can benefit from.
Right.
So what's a good way for people to...
The easiest way is to look up handontheshoulder.com.
Okay.
That's the site for the book, but we have a page or two about me, and also there's a small page about coaching.
Great.
That's the quickest way and so you could fill out the little form and email me there.
Great.
I'm on LinkedIn, and that's pretty easy to find as Grant Tate on LinkedIn. And that's and I like to help people. So
I know you do.
I get a lot of calls from people, and sometimes it's just you can say something that's helpful, and that gives me lots of joy.
Oh, I love that. Well, so we will have all of that. We'll have links to your book and the website and your LinkedIn and all of that in the show notes for sure, and make sure that people are aware of all of that and have access to that. So, you've made a number of transitions, both personal and professional, in your life, and done so much good over this time, over this period, these decades of your life. You've done so many cool things. Yeah. What would be a key piece of advice that you would offer someone who is trying to decide what their next move would be?
Well, I think that, if you use what I just said about what gives you joy, who am I, what gives me joy, it's helpful to look back and see what you consider your successes or accomplishments. Not just what they were, but how did it feel?
Yeah.
And then use that pattern to help plot your future and your choices.
Yeah.
And the other part of that question, of course, is who are the people around me in those situations? What kind of people do I like to work with?
I love that.
And I would just comment that diversity really counts. Don't work with people just like you are.
Right.
And different points of view. Learn to build on experiences with other people, different points of view. Learn to develop a fuller life by just having great people around you.
Well, I am so glad that I've had you around me and that we've gotten to know each other. I appreciate you being here today. Thank you so much.
Well, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much. It's been a great joy to be here. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Grant Tate. It was so interesting to speak with him to learn about his early life, background, and personal and professional transitions. What is your key takeaway from our interview? If you're interested in any of the resources mentioned in today's podcast, you can find them in the show notes on my website at tammygoularloeb.com/podcast. Just look for episode 209. Are you anticipating your next professional move? Check out my award-winning book, Work from the Inside Out, Break Through 9 Common Obstacles and Design a Career That Fulfills You. It's available in print and ebook editions through my website, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, independent bookstores, or through your local library. If you were inspired by this episode with Grant, please share it with your friends and colleagues, and please do subscribe so you don't miss next week's show. Remember, subscribing is always free. If you're enjoying the podcast, I'd really appreciate reading your written review on Apple Podcasts. It's easy to find through my website at tammygoulerloeb.com/podcast. Just click on the Apple Podcasts button and follow the instructions provided there. You can also help sustain the podcast by buying me a cup of coffee at buymeacupofcoffee.com/TammyGL. Since this podcast is self-funded, I would appreciate your support. Thanks you so much for listening, and remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. Let me know how it's going for you. I'd love to hear from you. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.